I'd say we're all looking awfully young today. Get yourself.
Get off the stage!
Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt that we're in a cost of living crisis. Figures released by the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, show prices are rising faster than wages. Inflation figures announced last month are at 2.7%. We have the highest inflation rate in the EU. Energy prices have again risen by 3.4%. In September, pay was just 0.7% higher than it was in 2012, and in fact down from the previous month. The number of people using food banks has increased under his leadership, Mr. Speaker. Yet bankers' bonuses go untouched. Mr. Speaker, 40 out of the 41 months under this Prime Minister's leadership, Britain has seen living standards fall. Will the Prime Minister agree that he is building an economy to benefit a minority rather than a majority?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, I would like to request that in future my honourable friend here gets his facts right. Today it was actually announced that inflation is actually down to 2.2%, which is much closer to the government target and is much more sustainable rate. Secondly, I would like to point out that our economy's growth is currently at 0.8%, which is the highest in Europe, Mr. Speaker. Basically, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to quickly summarise in saying that we are currently in the process of reducing spending, which we inherited from the previous Labour government. And until this spending is brought under control, we will not be able to introduce policies that will benefit the whole country. These policies, which although may seem harsh at first,
we often hear from the government about the mess that the Labour government left behind. But let me share with you a few figures. Since 2010, our national debt has increased by 19.5%, over 71.5%. During Labour's premiership, national debt was only increased by 10% over the 13 years. The government have also borrowed £15 billion more than they had originally planned in 2010. This shows simply, Mr. Speaker, that the government's economic plan is not working. We've seen taxes held at low-income households, yet the wealthiest in our country have seen tax rates. Can the PM justify an economic policy that hits hard-working families disproportionately harder?
Mr. Alex Scott.
Sit down! While the actual debt may have gone up, it's really this deficit that matters. And over the proportion that we've been in power, the deficit has been cut by a third over the last 2 years. Moreover, in regards to the taxes, we've actually, by raising the income tax threshold to £10,000, that's an extra £2,000 in the pockets of Britain's lowest earners, which means that we positively raise the standards.
Mr. Speaker, in 2010, the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister both supported a budget which predicted that growth in 2013 would have risen to 2.7%. We have not only lost our AAA credit rating that the Prime Minister's party was so proud of, but we have only achieved an economic growth, as confirmed by the Prime Minister, of 0.8%. And now facing a slower economic recovery. Order! Chill out. Furthermore, since 2010, Our national debt, as said by the Leader of Opposition, has risen by almost 20%. That's twice as much as it rose over 13 years under a Labour government. The Prime Minister agreed that despite the cuts, despite the austerity, and despite the Conservative statement in the 2010 budget that the UK was moving from an economy based on debt, he has failed to tackle the debt or sufficiently reinvigorate our economy, and only brought Britain's hard-working, low-income people, something which the Conservative Party know nothing about, to their very knees.
When I said that the growth was at 0.8%, I did fail to mention that that was only in the most recent quarter. That is not accurate. Can I also point out that even though that is admittedly lower than we were hoping for, that is still the highest in Europe at this rate, and the growth is not low because of what we have been doing, but because of what has been happening elsewhere in this global economy. We cannot control everything that happens in this world. Secondly, I would just like to point out that on taxation, it has recently been reported that average households are saving, as already pointed out by my honourable colleague, saving £2,000 a year, Mr. Speaker. And I would also like to point out that whilst it may appear that our taxation programme benefits the highest earners, it actually benefits the entire country because giving the
Order on the opposition bench.
giving the higher more to spend, they go out and spend that. There is then a trickle-down effect, which then benefits the lower in the community because they are creating more job opportunities. If we raise taxes on the rich will leave this country, it will cause an increase in unemployment, and the poor will suffer even more.
Right now, Christopher Williams. I must insist, gentlemen, if the government would like to calm down, thank you. It is now on the record that he has said the government taxation system does not benefit or is not aimed at the higher income earners. Sorry, a corporation tax has been lowered, income tax at the top end has been lowered. It is clear that the only taxation benefits are to the Tories. How dare he claim to abdicate the lower income earners? How dare he? Defence spending has gone up by over 2 billion, while hospitals, for example Mayday or Tooting, are having their A&E departments closed. Furthermore, the Prime Minister is too cowardly to even stand up to the energy companies. After saying vote blue, go green, he now blames his own green levies on the fact that the energy prices are rising. Bankers' bonuses are still unaffected. It's quite clear what the agenda of the Tory party is. Privatise the wealth and nationalise the suffering.
Mr. Speaker, I would just firstly like to point out that actually the creation of the big six energy companies, which my honourable colleague was having a go at me for all about, were actually created under the Labour government. This current government is currently trying to increase the amount of energy companies in order to reduce the power of the current oligopoly in order to bring the prices down and benefit everyone. The only solution that the opposition can come up with is a price freeze, which simply will not work. Because if you tell the companies that you are going to freeze their prices, they will simply raise the price before you can freeze it. Then you are stuck with that higher price until the freeze is left, until the freeze is lifted, when they will simply raise it again. It's disadvantage the entire country.
Final.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister needs an economic lesson. I mean, we can clearly see they have not gone past the dark days of Thatcher.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
The truth is, Mr. Speaker, the energy firms are going to raise their prices regardless. As we've seen today, the 5th of the big 6 energy firms have announced a price increase. Mr. Speaker, they really are the same old Tories. Well, they're not fooling anyone anymore. Rich people can see living standards falling and tax cuts for the wealthiest, higher taxes on the poorest and rising VATs. The British people can see a weak, out-of-touch Prime Minister who is afraid of taking on big business. The Prime Minister and his deputy should feel ashamed. Will the Prime Minister and his deputy apologise? They're of course honest, hard-working people in Britain. We abhor these things in society, but I doubt the Prime Minister or his deputy will have the guts to take responsibility for them. Come on, Prime Minister, stand up, be a man.
Alex Scott won't even stand up himself. Mr. William, thank you.
Okay, well, to address your point about the energy companies, when you came into office as Labour, there were 17 different energy companies, a competitive market that would be able to lower prices. However, under your reign, they were only left with the big 6 that we now complain of. However, under us, we've seen 7 more energy companies pop up, and under our office, we've seen 300,000 more small businesses pop up as a result of our corporation tax being lowered. What we are aiming to do is introduce a competitive spirit into the market, which is again going to lead to our energy costs going down. And then you talk about us hitting the lowest in society. However, if we are raising the income tax threshold, as I previously stated, up to £10,000, that's obviously going to affect the people on the lowest income more than the richest. So obviously you can see that we're trying to help the lowest in society.
Okay, at this point in time, I would welcome questions to the Prime Minister from the government or opposition benches. Do we have any questions to the Prime Minister? I need to see people standing. I need to see Mr. Lamb.
You blame the global economy for your economic woes, and yet Japan is experiencing 4% growth with a stimulus package. Give up on austerity, it's not working.
Mummy asked you to say that. Okay.
First of all, I would like to point out that Japan is in a completely different part of the economy. They are not at all involved in the EU, something which is constantly dragging this country down. But back to the main point. Austerity is in fact working. As we have previously stated, the deficit is down by 1/3. It was a record high when we took over, is now a record low, and the pound is currently still rising against the euro and the dollar, showing that our economy is strengthening and that austerity is working.
Questions to the Prime Minister. Mr. Knight.
I disagree with what the Prime Minister said. Does he agree with me that he should not be taking a lesson on standing up to people from a leader of the opposition who does not stand up to the trade unions?
I absolutely agree with that honourable friend.
This is Prime Minister's questions.
Questions to the Prime Minister. Mr. Hamza.
I'd like to point out that I'm actually on the other side.
Chamber.
I was wondering why the Prime Minister would allow banks' bonuses that we bailed out, the banks that we bailed out, to be able to continue allow this to happen, whereas the bedroom tax leaves many disabled people out of homes.
to say that I'd like to reiterate the speaker's point, but in future, please sit on the other side. In addition, the bedroom tax does not affect those with disabilities. Those with disabilities are exempt. Therefore, your point about those with disabilities being left without homes is completely irrelevant.
What about the bonuses?
Banks make profit, then they are free to do with that profit what they please.
Order on the opposition benches.
Never change.
How can the Prime Minister justify leaving the European Union when the European Union is the only organisation that can make this government follow through on its green promises? How can he justify leaving the European Union when it's easier to trade with Germany than it is with Jersey? How? Please explain.
I'm quite glad that this topic has actually come up, Mr. Speaker. This is a topic very close to my heart, as you may well know.
Now, we're not UKIP.
Can I point out, Mr. Speaker, that if we left the EU, we would almost certainly still be able to freely trade with those countries that are in the EU. Simply inherit a system such as the one currently used by Switzerland, who are not in the EU, but can still experience free trade and still gain the benefits without having to bail out other countries for their mistakes. Therefore, leaving the EU would be 100% a benefit to this country.
I'm delighted to see the chamber used as a forum for launching policy. Excellent, Mr. Woods.
As you see on the opposition side, there are people holding things against you and your plans for the NHS. Thank you. If you were, if these posters continue, what will you try to do to prevent these and make sure that people believe that your plans for the NHS are correct?
The Prime Minister.
Realistically, the opposition need to stop living in the past. We cannot afford to keep all of these A&Es. There are simply too many in a concentrated area. For example, in the local area, there are 3 A&Es which are very easily accessible to me. That is unnecessary. We need 1. We do not need 3. Simply having all these A&Es is just costing us more and more money and will make it even harder for our economy to grow.
There's tax cuts for the rich, whilst living standards for the poor are decreasing. When is this government full of privately educated men going to get in touch with the real public?
I believe this is something we've previously addressed quite a few times, that the tax cuts we've imposed on the rich are enabled to effectively fund the economy and create jobs for those currently on a lower income. There is no point in lowering tax for lower income earners if there are no jobs available. Therefore, as my honourable friend here spoke about the trickle-down effect, we're going to see that. Also, I speak again about the income tax threshold. That's going to hit the poorest the best. They're going to get the best benefit out of that because it's a higher proportion of their money back. That's £2,000 more in their pocket every year.
I'll take a question, I'm afraid, from, I don't know your name, from the Honourable Lady here.
You say that you care about the working class people, but how can you justify spending millions and millions of pounds on the new HS2 railway when there are other people who do not live in the south that are poor and working class that need that money more? It's not saying about what you're
Order on the government benches.
rich businessmen coming from Berlin and Paris and London.
The main point of the HS2 high-speed railway is to break down the north-south divide and help those northern communities to grow. If we can make it easier for businessmen in London to get to the north, it's more likely they'll set up businesses in the north, set up their headquarters, that we say, that we are solely focused on the south.
Here the Prime Minister has the welfare of the people of the north at heart, given that answer. And we finish today's PMQs with a question from Mr. Shawan.
Is the Prime Minister aware that in my constituency there is a gentleman who lives off £70 a week and he can't afford to get a train ticket even on the HS2 down to London? How does that benefit those people? You're proposing a one-way system.
The point of HS2 is to allow businessmen up to the north. It is not mainly focused. It is not the main priority of it. Is not to simply help tourists who want to come down to London.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much for coming on. If I can ask, Jack back.